This is a car that really needs no introduction because it is pretty much the most important new car launch of 2024 if you happen to be Australian. That's because the LandCruiser Prado, as we know it here because we also get the full-size 300 series, has woven its way into the fabric of everyday Australian life. Visit any rural area and you're bound to see a Prado hard at work. They're dependable, tough, well-priced, and because you can get them with 7 seats, they're also an ideal fit-for-purpose family car. Part of the Prado's charm is that it's been a little bit smaller than a full-size 300 series, plus it's got more fuel-efficient, smaller engines, which makes it a good companion in the city. Like a pair of R.M. Williams boots then, the Prado should be as at home at a cattle station as it is in the boardroom. So today we're up here in the sweltering hot Northern Territory in the top end to test out the Prado in GXL, guys. To build a picture of the Prado's popularity, Toyota was holding over 17,000 orders at the time of filming, and that's almost certainly shot up since. Essentially, every trim in the new range is 10 grand dearer, with the 5-seat GX now $72,500 plus on-road costs. While it sounds like a base model on paper with cloth upholstery and manual adjust seats, it does have LED headlights, a solid 10-speaker sound system, a 12.3-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, along with a full-time 4-wheel drive system with locking center differential, high and low ranges. Most will want at least the 7-seat GXL, which still has rubber floor mats but gets a leather-appointed steering wheel along with heated and ventilated seats. The VX is a little nicer again, with a different grille, 20-inch alloys, leather-accented upholstery, a 12.3-inch digital cluster, and adaptive dampers, though its 14-speaker JBL stereo isn't noticeably better than the regular system. Then we've got 2 flagships, an off-road focused Altitude with 18-inch alloys, all-terrain tyres, locking rear diff, stabilizer disconnect, but no tyre pressure monitoring. And then there's the luxed out Kakadu with bigger 20-inch alloys, a panoramic sunroof and temp-controlled rear seats. As always, to see detailed pricing, equipment levels, and how the new Prado lines up against rivals such as the Ford Everest and the LandCruiser 300 series, head to carsguide.com.au. And the big deal about the new Prado is how it looks. 15 years have been relatively kind to the 150 series, but this 250 series really breaks the mold of LandCruiser as we know it today by looking back to LandCruiser of the past. Here we have the GXL. All Aussie models get the square headlights, but you can tell the lower spec trims and the Altitude apart from the square grille, which I happen to think is the best choice. Down the side you also get 18-inch alloy wheels, and as we look at the profile, which is probably the best part of this car, and I think you really have to see the Prado in person. It does look good in pictures, but when you get up close and you see all of the surfacing, there's so much horizontal surfacing and so much vertical. There's a lot of tension, a lot of boxiness, and the proportions are just perfection. It's longer in every dimension, including having the same wheelbase as a 300 series, but it really suits the Prado. Of course, I've been gushing about design. You can let me know your thoughts on the new Prado in the comments section down below, but before you write it off, if you're a hater, make sure to go see one in real life because I think that might change your mind. It's just so good, so dramatic, and so LandCruiser. And it doesn't get any worse around the back. You've got these awesome LED taillights, nice blocky detail, and a feature that's very clever, especially when you've got a car that's heavily loaded with stuff and just need to put something a little bit extra on top or take something light out like shopping. You've got the pop to open tailgate. Anyone who's owned or been near a 3 Series wagon will know that this is a fantastic feature. So good to have. But the Prado's boot isn't all good because although we have a power tailgate, we open it up with the standard Toyota beeps and bongs. And in this 7-seat GXL, we have this really awkward box here. This is done because if you fold the third row flat, well, the headrest doesn't get out of the way for a start. Pop that. You're left with this slightly awkward tall boot. Now this is a decent solution in terms of keeping the load floor a little bit flatter, but it just feels really cheap and really flimsy, quite un-Toyota. It is a big space on paper, but as I said, the sizing and all that, yeah, it's a little bit compromised. I think it's probably one of the very, very few chinks in the Prado's armor. If you've just stepped out of a 150 series into this new Prado, you might think it's a bit of a spaceship. 12.3-inch screen, even this GXL gets a 7-inch digital driver's display. But the good thing is Toyota hasn't sacrificed the usability. The buttons aren't quite as big and chunky as they used to be, but they're still all very well laid out, the ones you need at least. You've got your drive mode select, 3 buttons here for various uses, and then you've got your 4 high, 4 low, and diff locks and traction control off. It is a very well laid out cabin. Not only is it well laid out, it's also very well appointed. This car has roots of, rough and tumble toughness, and yet you've got this really soft and squishy material just beneath the touchscreen. The dashboard is soft touch as well, and you've even got these nice little pads to save your knees when you're off-roading in the GXL and above. On the subject of materials, these leather accented seats are power adjustable for the driver. They're also heated and ventilated, and the ventilation up here is fantastic. Along with that, you get niceties like a wireless charging pad, 3 USB-C charge ports, and just a general tough, solid build quality inside this vehicle.
Another great part of the 250 series interior is the feeling of airiness and space in here. With a 30mm lower window line and very upright A-pillars, visibility from both the back seats and the front seats is much improved. And because those A-pillars are so steep, they're much less intrusive in the vision when it comes to looking to your left and right at a junction.
Being a family-friendly vehicle, it's really important for the Prado to deliver in the back seats, and it mostly does. I've got plenty of space behind my driving position, although the floor is set a little bit high because it's a body-on-frame vehicle, but it is an improvement over the previous car, and the bench seems a little bit more comfortable. Materials are really nice, and you've got climate zone back here for rear passengers with vents that point straight in your face rather than at your kneecaps, which is nice. You've also got a pull down armrest, and you can adjust the recline of the backrest, which is nice. But there is one pretty big miss, and that is this plastic panel here in the middle seat, which does make it a little bit uncomfortable to sit in the third place in the back here. But at least you do get niceties like a 12-volt socket and 2 more USB-C ports.
Addressing one of the main criticisms of the 150 series, the new Prado has a tumble forward second row and a large door aperture. That makes it easy to access the third row, certainly simpler than in a Ford Everest.
And while the third row is again an improvement over the previous car, this still isn't something that you want to be putting 7 people in at all times, certainly not 7 adults. It's not as spacious as a monocoque SUV like a Hyundai Palisade, for example. So it's got an all-new frame, an all-new body, and an all-new cabin. But what's not so new is underneath this aluminium bonnet, which is the venerable 1GD 2.8 litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel. It is new in a sense in that it has Toyota's 48-volt V-active system that they are not calling a hybrid, but the outputs are pretty much the same, in fact identical, at 150 kilowatts and 500 newton meters.
The new 48-volt V-active system means pretty impressive engine start-stop effectiveness, though it only drops fuel consumption to 7.6 litres per 100 Ks in the combined cycle. We saw closer to 10 litres per 100 Ks on the trip computer over a mix of rural highway and dirt roads in Northern Territory. The new Prado's fuel capacity is also lower at 110 litres thanks to an underslung spare tyre. A real-world range in excess of 1,000 Ks should easily be possible, but you won't go as far as you did in a 150 series with its 150-litre tanks. The Prado's 17.4-litre AdBlue tank is new and should help combat harmful NOx emissions. Toyota says a top-up is needed once every 8,500 Ks, depending on the use case. Although yet to be crash-tested by ANCAP, the new Prado comes with a litany of new safety features that should ensure a 5-star score. These include 9 airbags, auto emergency braking, lane trace assist, blind spot monitoring, speed limit assist, driver attention monitoring, occupant alert, and rear cross traffic alert. But what you really want to know is that they don't bother you on the road with frustrating beeps, bongs, and false positives that are so common in rival vehicles.
We're out on the road now in the GXL, which I think it's fair to say is a really nice sweet spot in the updated Prado range. It's closer in trim level to the old VX, with all the stuff that I mentioned inside, plus it gets the standard passive damper system in this Prado paired with 18-inch alloy wheels and highway terrain tyres. It gives the Prado a really good feeling in my book, and it starts with the comfort, compliance, and quietude that you get even out on a dirt road. I'm not saying this is a particularly rough dirt road, but it is an access road, so it's not a heavily trafficked piece of dirt, but you get a lot of them up here in the Northern Territory, and the Prado has been very well behaved on pretty much every surface we've thrown at it, be it with the passive dampers or the adaptive dampers. It's pretty revolutionary. You can feel it from the stiffness of the chassis, the stiffness in the body, and especially, and this makes the most difference, the electronic power assisted steering. That is a first on a LandCruiser, because the 300 series still has a hydraulic rack. The electric rack, you know, as it did with sports cars, may perturb some purists, but it is a simpler system, less moving parts, plus it gives a much greater scope of tuning ability and really feeds into making this Prado feel different from the 300 series. It feels smaller and a bit more agile than the bigger cruiser. And yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to a combination of the steering, which is really light at low speeds. We were off-roading before and you can really thread it through trees nicely. But then it weights up at higher speeds and there's minimal kickback. So you do lose perhaps a little bit of the feel, but the 150 series didn't have much feel in its rack anyway. This thing still has 3 1/4 turns lock to lock. So you need to turn it a couple of times, but it's not onerous. It's just so intuitive, so light, so easy, so breezy. It just makes this car effortless, no matter whether you're on-road or you're off-road. We'll come back to the engine now, which does mostly feel effortless, but I wouldn't say it's ever fast. 150 kilowatts, 500 Newton meters, makes assured progress, which is good, and that's all you need. We haven't towed anything on this launch. That'll have to wait till we have a bit more of a garage review through the CarsGuide stables before we get to try that. But it is set at the standard that you'd expect of a vehicle like this, that the Ford Everest, the Nissan Patrol, and of course the full-size 300 series, and most of the other dual-cab utes on the market match, which is 3,500 kilos now, 500 kilos up on before. It's also got a new 8-speed automatic torque converter gearbox, which feels like it would probably make this Prado a little bit more effortless towing a big load like that. I believe the shift is 25% faster, is Toyota's official quote, or around about there, and it certainly feels slick and smooth. It's never hunting for gears, even though it's got a couple more ratios. It always seems to have a pretty good handle on what you want to do. Of course, you've got the low-range transfer box as well, and this is where we'll get into a bit more of the off-roading stuff, even though we're just cruising along. Crucially, it's very straightforward. It is super easy to engage with all the four-wheel drive aids. You've got your buttons down here, got your high, 4, and it's extremely quick to stop and pop it in high-low. I'll do it for demonstration purposes. Come to a halt, neutral, push down, low. It's already done. I'm in 4-low. Another great thing is the shifts are super clean in 4-low. It feels, you know, almost as slick and almost as smooth as in 4-high. From here, you've also got a bunch of other modes. The GXL doesn't get all of the selections that you get in the altitude and the range topping Kakadu. For example, it does have a locking center diff, but it loses a locking rear diff. But in the models that do have those features, they're incredibly quick to engage. It is absolutely fantastic, super straightforward, super user-friendly. Back into 4-high, off we go. What else can I cover off? Well, we've got the DAC and the crawl control, which are just flawless. I mean, the implementation is so leaps and bounds ahead of the 150 series, especially of the crawl mode. And you can adjust it using this drive mode select. It gives you 5 different speeds, and you can just cruise from basically 1k an hour up to 5k's an hour. And along with the electric power steering, which is just so light and so easy, makes the Prado so effortless. Really is a very friendly, very capable, quiet, comfortable family vehicle. It's, yeah, leaps and bounds ahead. There are a couple of niggles that I've covered off, but they're mainly to do with a few packaging issues, because honestly, out on the open road, the Prado is really, really good. My pick, as I said at the start, is probably the GXL. The altitude is awesome. You get the locking rear differential. You get those Toyota Open Country all-terrain tires that give it a bit more capability, and you get the stabilizer disconnect, which is very clever. We'll definitely get one through to give it a proper off-road test in the coming months, and I think that's where the stabilizer disconnect will come into its own. And if you want something a little bit more luxurious, the VX and the Kakadu do offer options, but for my money, I don't think the adaptive dampers really make them ride a whole lot better. I think the matching of the spring and damp combination for an open country road, for a long-legged tourer, I think the GXL and the Altitude and even the base GX, well, they really have that sorted. Toyota's done a great job in making a car fit for purpose and fit for all sorts of purposes.
There's an even greater level of confidence behind the wheel thanks to the slick safety aids. You can choose to run cruise control in adaptive or regular dumb mode for a start, which I really like. Plus, the ESC is tuned to perfection and matched with drive modes for both on and off-road driving. Brake pedal is firm and the ABS calibration is excellent on both firm and loose surfaces. Aside from the parking sensors that you have to deactivate in the digital driver's display rather than just hit a button, when it comes to using one of the 3 off-road modes in the Prado, it's pretty simple to disable AEB and other systems that can be intrusive off-road with the press of a single button.
Attention's been paid to capability, but it's also been paid to easy replaceability of panels. At the front of the Prado, it's not just one bumper section. You can take this bit, this bit, this bit, and the grille off separately and replace them if you damage them in the line of duty. I think that's pretty clever.
With over 260 dealers in Australia and a huge stockpile of spare parts, it's hard to go wrong with a Toyota when it comes to replacing busted bits. Plus, Toyota backs its cars officially with a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, and in the Prado's case, that can be extended up to 7 years, providing servicing is kept up to date. That's due every 6 months or 10,000 kilometres, which is a little bit more regular than a comparable monocoque SUV, but then again, the Prado is designed to take plenty more abuse, which makes sense for the shorter intervals. A visit to your Toyota dealer for a regular checkup is capped at $390 for the first 5 years. Head to carsguide.com.au for the full breakdown on servicing information.
I'm hot, I'm sweaty, and I just want to get back into my LandCruiser Prado. And not just because it has icy cold aircon, but also because it is a huge improvement over the 150 series it replaces. It's comfortable, it's fit for purpose, and is a seriously capable vehicle. Of course, it's not perfect, as I mentioned in the review, and for me, that boot capacity issue might be enough to turn me off. But what else is out there? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know if the boot capacity would be an issue for you, or if you're going to jump ahead and go for a Prado anyway. As always, thanks very much for watching. Make sure to head to carsguide.com.au for the full review and specification details of the Prado.